Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, the weather is getting colder. It's quite a bit cooler this morning than it has been. According to the weatherman, it's going to just keep getting colder. Next week, 15, maybe 20 degrees for high, single-digit lows. Probably a lot of you are looking at something like that, so better get ready. You know, something that I've talked about on here quite often from time to time, is just the kind of that mental state of preparedness. You know, getting your mindset ready for things that are to come. Whether it's tragic things that you might view, horrible situations you might have to go through, decisions that you may have to make that you never in your life thought you would have to make. Being able to get yourself now into a kind of a warrior mindset, a mindset that you understand that while you may be living one life right now, that in the future things could drastically change, and that you're mentally ready for that and ready for to endure through that and the decisions that you may have to make. A friend of mine yesterday was talking with him. We were kind of talking about this, and he's a combat vet, served a few tours in combat, and we were talking about how unfortunately there are so many people out there that just are not, just their mindset's just not there. You know, that when it comes down to it, when the times gets tough and when a quick decision is going to have to be made, that it's very possible that they're going to freeze or they're going to choke, and that's a very dangerous thing to happen, because depending on the situation, if you freeze, you choke, it could be life or death. We were talking about that, and he was telling stories in combat of how, of course, they're trained, that they actually train this way, that if someone freezes, you knock them down and you just keep on moving, because you don't have the time to stop and to try to shake the person, out of their frozen state, so to speak. And this is going to be how it is in the real world. There's going to be people that they think they're ready. They think that they're prepared because they got all the cool gadgets, They got their Gucci Glock and their fancy equipment, and they've spent all the money getting all the cool stuff, and they've watched all these cool videos. But when it comes down to it, they're not battle ready in their mind. They're not ready for the world to drastically change in their mind, and that's really where it needs to begin. Aside from your spiritual preparedness, of course. And there's going to be people out there that probably are fairly well prepared. They've got the stuff. They've got all the little gadgets and stuff, and they're well prepared in that sense. But they're not mentally prepared. And when the bad people come to kick the door down, or they come to steal your preps or whatever it is, it's quite possible that they could just freeze. They could choke. And that's not something that you want to happen. In training, part of it is just the repetitiveness of it. You get to where you do it so often, it creates this muscle memory. And it's just second nature. It's second nature to do all the different things that you do during training, regardless of what that is, whether it's medical training, whether it's combat training, whether it's training on how to build a fire out of flint and steel, or stick and a bow, whatever it is that you're training, the repetitiveness of that training, it makes it so that it becomes so easy to do that you don't even have to think about it. This is why I advocate for that a lot. Continual training, whatever it is. If it's patrolling your property, if it's doing some drill with your family on getting out of the house if there was a tornado or if there was a fire, taking care of medical needs. Whatever it is, you need to have it down so well that it just comes natural. I mean, it doesn't even have to be, when bad people come knocking. What if it's something as, it's serious, but as possibly simple as just an injury, a serious injury on your property? Is your family members trained enough to know how to set a bone or to put a tourniquet on or to stop bleeding? Are they capable of those basic steps to just stabilize a person? Because it could very easily happen. It happens all the time. Farming is a dangerous work. And if they're not, trained and confident in taking care of you or someone else in your family, when that time happens, you could freeze, you could choke, not know what to do. Your training hasn't kicked in because it's not ingrained in your muscle memory so well that it just happens. This is something that I think a lot of people really need to consider. Are you ready to pull that trigger if need be? I mean, no one wants to. Most anyone would say that they don't want it. They don't have any desire to do that. But if it happens and you have to respond, are you ready for that? Are you ready to see your spouse or your child injured and bleeding, and knowing that even though the situation is grim and they're in pain and it looks really bad and it's scary, that you're capable of pushing through those emotions and continuing to do the things that need to be done to stabilize that family member, and regardless of the situation. When I was in law enforcement, one of the things that we had to know how to do, and there were some that were good at it and some that weren't, is that when times got tough, when things got crazy, to be able to see clearly through that and not to get confused and to panic and the emotions to overflow. I can remember a situation many years ago, like eons and eons ago. But we got a call, just some, thugs, gang members, whatever. They were out doing their thing, and the first officer on the call was a woman, and it had nothing to do with her gender. It wasn't because she was a woman that this happened. It was because she was young and did not receive enough training. And basically, as she got there, she should have either waited for backup or, of course, handled it differently. And about 6 guys surrounded her, and one of them pulled a knife, and they were, making threats. And that's when I rolled up on the scene. And of course, I roll up, and as I'm pulling in, I see what's going on, and I jump out, pistol in hand, and screaming at them. They weren't making any moves towards her, but one was standing there holding it. And what happened was she froze. She panicked. She got out. They started coming around her. She became nervous and panicked and didn't know what to do. And instead of taking control of the situation, she panicked. And it could have gone very, very bad for her. And thankfully it didn't. No one was injured, and some people went to jail. And it was interesting because once I rolled up and used the aggressive voice and the aggressive stance and everything, no one really resisted. And there wasn't really a fight at all. But it just shows you that situations can change drastically based on how you react to them. And this was a prime example of that. It's quite possible that even being a woman, that she would have been able to handle that situation differently, because I've seen female officers handle situations very differently. So it had nothing to do with that, but she just froze. And we have to be well aware of that, and not be overly confident and arrogant to believe that we'll be able to handle it. I've watched enough videos, I've played enough of the Call of Duty games, or I know enough. I'm better than other people. I know what I'm doing. It doesn't mean that you don't have the mindset. It doesn't mean that you have the mindset to be able to handle these very high stress situations. sometimes even life or death situations. And if you're not ready for that, and you haven't played through those scenarios and accepted some things that you may have to do, things that you wouldn't necessarily do right now, but you may have to do if the situation presents them, you need to get to where you can accept that now. And understand that, that may be a horrible thing that you have to do, or a horrible thing that you have to see, but you're going to get through it. You're going to do it. You're going to handle it, and then continue to train, because again, it's that muscle memory that helps kick in when those times are pretty rough and when they're high stress, and you don't have time to sit there and think about which way that tourniquet goes. You don't have time to sit there and think about, what do I do about, this bullet hole or this chainsaw gash in the leg or whatever it is. You just do it. How do I do CPR? What do I do? Get that training and continue with it. Continue practicing. I had a listener, another story. Yes, it's story time with Travis. A listener emailed me, and they did give me permission to tell this story, and I'll tell a little bit of it. Over the weekend, her husband, it was pretty tragic, and so remember him in prayer. He is recovering, but he had, I believe, a bit of a heart attack in their home. She was talking to him in the kitchen. He was sitting at the table, so her back was to him, and she said he just stopped talking, and thought, well, that's weird. Why is he's not talking to me? And she turned around, and he was slumped over in the chair, about ready to fall out of the kitchen chair, and was turning blue and purple and all that. He wasn't breathing. And she said, I had CPR training about 20-30 years ago. She said, but I'd not done anything with it since. She said, and I sat there in a panic trying to remember how to do it. What do I do first? Do I do this? Do I do that? She said it took me a while to start to remember that. And of course, she's calling 911. And the gentleman, he's recovering, but he still needs your prayers. His name's Chris. But it's a good example to this. So she had the training to do CPR, but she'd not done anything with it. She'd not practiced. She'd not gone over it in her head. She'd not, even just, read it out of a book, how to do it. And so when the time happened that she actually needed it, she panicked. And she told me it was okay to tell this story this way because she realizes now that going and getting that training, learning how to do something isn't enough. You have to keep working at it. You have to hone that skill. It's kind of like when someone in the military goes through some type of school, whether it's airborne school or ranger school or SF school. They're not learning how to be an Army Ranger by going through Ranger school. I mean, that school is to get them through the door. They don't really learn how to be an Army Ranger until after they get out of that school. And then they go through all the hours and hours and weeks and months of training, pretty much for the rest of their career. And it's the same way. You don't learn how to do CPR just by taking the class. You learn how to do it by continually practicing and going over it in your mind. And it's really the same way with anything. I can teach you how to change the oil on a car, but if you don't continually do that and practice, you're not really learning how to do it. So folks, I want to encourage you to do two things. Do the physical, which is practicing your skills as much as you possibly can. And then also get your mind in shape. Because the things that we may face in the future, there may be some pretty awful scenarios. You may have to take a life to protect your own or your family. You may have to take care of an injury with your own loved ones that you never thought you would have to see. You may see or have to do things that in a modern, safe, secure, comfortable world we would never imagine to have to do. And you're going to have to get through them. You don't want to choke. You don't want to freeze. You want to be able to push through it so that you can save your own or your family's life, those around you, or to succeed and to be able to push through and continue planting or harvesting your crops, even though things look awful. Whatever it is, I suggest now to continue that training, but really start thinking about it and get your mind in the the place that it needs to be to accept that these are the things that we may face in the pretty near future. Folks, right now it's time to get your house in order, to prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.